Hello again. It is Crew Call here on the Motor Racing Network, taking you into the garage area and talking to the folks that make the race cars go around the racetracks. We are so glad you have joined us. And by the way, if you like what we're doing here on Crew Call, give us a like, give us a share, follow along with the YouTube channel. Please do that and share it. Share it. We love to do that. That's the way things are being spread, and we get on those metrics, and we'll probably talk a little bit about metrics later on. You get on these metrics with the interweb, if you will, and we need to be on a good metric. So share what we're doing here, and we do appreciate it. I'm Steve Post, pit road reporter for Motor Racing Network, joined by 25-time and championship-winning crew chief Todd Gordon. Hello, Todd. How are you?
I'm great.
Man.
Just got to watch what I would say the best race of the year. I don't know if it isn't best of I mean,
a long time.
It was really, really good. Stage 1 seemed like it was coming down to the wire, and it was like lap 2. They raced. The exhibition that we got shown in stage 1 was Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson racing their guts out clean.
Yes.
They didn't. I mean, but big moves.
Great,
it was phenomenal. Stage 2 was still good. Stage 2 would have been great if we didn't see stage 1.
Right, absolutely.
And that kind of put at the end of the race, we had
the Denny-Chris battle was very, very good. Denny and Chris Buescher battle.
And really,
was good.
both of those guys recovered from issues.
Yeah, you're right.
To get there. We saw crew chiefs make gutsy calls. The 11 and 17 both came outside their fuel window, got a caution that kind of put them there, that cycled them back forward. Chris Buescher with a 5-wide, split the middle of 4 cars to get himself track position. There was just so much in the weekend that was just phenomenal racing. I was as excited to be a spectator as I was an announcer. It was phenomenal racing.
I was watching the way things lay out. You mentioned the 4-wide Chris Buescher and Alex Hayden, one of our lead broadcasters. He just absolutely crushed the call. But I was literally, you have the moment in time. I'm literally standing like 50 feet from one of the big screens. So, I mean, like you might have surround sound in your home. I have big screen with real noise, real racetrack noise. Yeah. When Alex made that call and it was right there in front of me watching it, I literally got goosebumps.
Oh, it was...
The call was great, but the racing was great too.
Well, they made it through turn 1. That was the other part. Like, okay, we're in a straightaway. We got 5 wide on this big...
Yeah.
It sorted out, but what phenomenal racing. And not only that... Chris Buescher, Denny Hamlin put on a clinic in the last run. Martin Truex Jr. was coming. Man,
was he flying.
I feel pretty confident saying Martin Truex Jr. was going to win the race if the caution doesn't come out. He was coming with such a pace. He was the second fastest car on the racetrack at that point. Actually, Brad Keselowski, who was deeper in the field, had marched that last run. Really impressive. RFK, from a whole, they have this was a weekend that kind of reset them.
Yeah, okay. Kyle Larson, Cliff Daniels get the win. That's great as far as that goes. You're Scott Graves with Chris Buescher. Okay, you have this moment where you're high-fiving, you're celebrating. Yeah. Kim Kuhn has jumped up on the pit box ready to talk to you, and all of a sudden you hear on the radio, 5-team wins.
5 car to victory lane.
5 car to victory lane. What is your tact, your crew chief, as you lead this team going forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, the fact that we were that close to being there, an inch away, and really in a position. But that's the light. That's the light. Everybody's knocked on the Ford Mustang dark horse. Where are they? The truck struggles they've had. This is we can do this. We just need to make sure that we button up our details. And really, we got a great race out of it.
Yeah.
Chris was in a great position, made good moves, got a good push from the 9 car, but there's hope. And it's not, there's hope, and we need to continue to work forward. I think that's the piece you take. We got a second place finish. We jumped ourselves up to 11th in points. They're in the playoff picture at this point. They're into the side, the good side of it, not on the bad side. Build the momentum forward and take that into Darlington.
Yeah, to me, it's like you can look at the 3 inches or you can look at the 404 miles or whatever it is. Yeah. That was really good. That was a great run by that team because they were up there all day long.
Well, and put themselves in that position after having a penalty.
That's right.
That's not like you just kind of got there and hung there. They won a stage, got a penalty, went to the back. They executed their way forward, made a good call on getting some track position. Chris made a great move on getting all the rest of the track position back. I think as a whole, you look at this and say there's a lot of positives that we can focus on. We just need to build off those coming forward.
And that's a driver and team that love Darlington, too, which is coming up next. I actually sat and talked with Chris about that one time, and he was like, I used to hate the place, and amazingly, when I started to love the place, our performance started to get better. And he loves it now, and their performance has been really good down there the last couple of races, okay? Strategies. Okay, at the end of it, I listened to you and Brad Gilly earlier in the week on your
late shift.
Late shift. I keep
Sirius.
Yes, on Sirius. Yes, exactly. I listened to it. The 4-tire call for James Small and Martin Truex Jr. First and foremost, we asked you what you were doing in the booth, and you held up 4 fingers to Alex and Jeff up in the booth. I love, and I want you to restate your crew chief for Martin Truex Jr. Why is that the right call for Martin Truex Jr.? I think your description of this is the intricacies of this sport that a lot of times our listeners and our viewers here don't understand. Calling a race knowing the tendencies of your driver.
Well, you've got to call it for the situation you've got. And James Small, I support James Small in his call. I said 4 up there. I really felt like as we came to that we'd see 5 or 6 cars take 2.
Right.
And I feel like if I've got 4 tires and I got 2 laps at a place, now we're 55 green flag laps into a run. So the left side tires are 55 laps old. They're not. We didn't just put them on 20 laps ago. They're old. Yes, we had 9 cars take 2 tires. That put Martin 10th. Martin just about won this race.
Yes.
I mean, if Martin clears the 9 car and doesn't get pulled back, I think Martin scoots the outside of the 5 and ends up winning this race. But I think that's the best finish that Martin's going to have. I think if you put Martin on 2 tires, Martin's an old soul.
Yes.
I won't call him old. He's an old soul. He races the way that we expected people to race in the 90s and 2000s. He's not going to go be the big blocker. He's going to race you with respect. That's just how Martin races, and I appreciate that. But the 2-tire call, you're going to have to root and gouge. Yeah. And I don't know that Martin's the root and gouge guy. I would rather, as I look at that team in that situation, I want to put Martin on offense.
Right.
I don't want to put him on defense because I don't think Martin is comfortable being defensive. I don't think that's how his soul of racing is.
The blocking, the aggressive blocking.
Yes. He's not going to put you in a position where you got to wreck me.
He's better in the windshield than the mirror.
Yeah, and that's just knowing the tendencies of your car. I think if James Small puts him on 2 tires, he finishes worse than he did.
Yeah.
I don't think that's wrong. I think, if this race plays out green, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
19 car to victory lane. And I think James, James kind of apologized for that call. All he needed, Martin starts 8th, he wins.
Yeah,
he started 10th.
He needed a few less cars to do the 2.
One more row, and you don't know how many guys are going to take 2 and how many are going to take 4. You're making that call, guessing on how many are going to do what, and that's you try to have a feel for who's going to do what in what situations. But that if you have a couple that take 2 that you didn't expect, then it puts you in a different position. But I don't blame James for the call, and I actually think it was the best call for the 19 team at that time.
Martin wasn't blaming James either. He was just frustrated with the caution.
He just wanted one more lap, too.
Well, he wanted one more lap on the green-white checker or no caution to put us in the green-white checker, because either of those scenarios, he'd have probably won that race.
And I want to back this up. This is not a knock on Martin at all.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
It's complimentary of Martin, actually.
It's complimentary because he sticks to what he believes in.
Yeah.
And that's how he wants to race people. He's going to race people that way. And he's not going to succumb to how everybody else does it.
Yeah, I did what I had to do.
But given that situation and knowing that you have a driver that is, to his core, a gentleman racer that races a certain way and expects people to race him that way, I got to make a call that puts him in ability to be successful the way he wants to race.
Yep, no doubt about it. Another attaboy for Drew Blickensderfer and Noah Gragson.
They ran the top 10 all day long.
They ran there all day long, too.
Now they've fabricated some top 10s here the last couple races. They've got themselves and done well with it. This was a complete race. Qualified third. I feel like they ran in the top 10 all day long.
Yeah.
Maybe they cycled out at one point with cycles or whatever, but a solid top 10 day for them and something to continue to build forward on.
When we talk about this, we went into this saying they had 2 top 10 finishes, but they were Talladega and Dover. Very unique tracks and situations. This to me, because this is an intermediate. We're going to another intermediate. In 2 weeks, we go to another intermediate. Yeah. We have a couple of intermediates in the playoffs. Yes. This to me really says, okay, you're not an oddball like Dover. You're not a Talladega race. You performed in the top 10 all day. This has got to have a lot of confidence over there.
I got to believe that. And I feel like Talladega one thing. Well, the Fords, the Speedways are pretty good races. Dover, I thought Drew did a really good job of manufacturing some track position, and Noah did a really good job of hanging on to it, but it wasn't like they drove there all day long. Here at Kansas, qualified there, raced there all day long.
Good stuff, that's for sure. Other winners on the weekend, the Truck Series, Corey Heim, Scott Zipadelli, second win of the season. Scott Zipadelli, 20 career Truck Series wins. There is a great, great true chief that has found a spot, and he is making bank and flying home on Saturday night and spending Sunday with the family and really doing well. It's fun to see. What I really enjoyed is I jumped up on the pit box and chatted with Scott, and Scott said our driver carried us. Kim was in victory lane. She said, Scott said the driver carried us, and he's, no. This crew carries me, is what Corey said. That's a good relationship. It seems like they have there.
Yeah, it's a great relationship, and it's you see it in the performance that they're knocking it out of the ballpark week in, week out. They don't have off weekends. They're contenders every week.
The ARCA race is the old adage. Be careful whooping everybody all day long because somebody back there is still working on the race car.
How about that?
Now, how about that? We had the Joe Gibbs racing team, Matt Ross, the crew chief, up there leading it, Tanner Gray driving the race car, whooping everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. The problem is that you can't whoop a guy like Shane Huffman all day long without him throwing some things at it. And this race had a second chance to pit the cars too, which we don't often have in the ARCA Menards Series. Shane decided to throw something at the race car. Connor Mosak got up on the wheel, and the car that dominated the race ended up finishing second. I love the dynamic of that, whooping a guy all day long. There's some people that are going to take it, and there's other guys that are going to fight back, and Shane Huffman and that team fought back.
Yeah, they did, and I think one piece is you look at that Gibbs car with Gray was never had competition. Every restart pulled out, had clean air or worked on it. We finally got a restart. Connor got a restart side by side, entered into turn one on his door. No. I think maybe made him where he had to lean on his tires a little harder. He raced his guts out, put him in a position where he wasn't as comfortable as he used to be. And Connor, did a great job of putting it together. As you talked about, Shane Huffman made an adjustment there for him. I thought Connor got up on a wheel and made sure that he put him in a position to start, not let him get really comfortable right off the bat, and that ultimately led to the win. Love it.
Great stuff across the board. Kansas Speedway did not disappoint. Okay, what we're going to do here today on Crew Call, we're going to go, it's History Week. It's Throwback Week, so why not throw back to the oldest team in the garage area, the Wood Brothers, and one of our buddies, Jeremy Bullins. Always love talking to Jeremy.
Yeah, Jeremy's great. Got to work with him for several years around Team Penske with the Woods Brothers program. With Ryan Blaney to start with, got the Woods Brothers 99th win. Be cool to see what his forecast is coming forward.
Absolutely. So that's what we're going to do here on Crew Call. We're going to talk to Jeremy Bullins next. Welcome back. It is Crew Call here on the Motor Racing Network, and let's get right after it. Let's go talk to our guest here. He is the crew chief for the Wood Brothers Racing, the famous number 21 car. Jeremy Bullins joins us. Hello, Jeremy. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Always good to catch up with you, that's for sure. Appreciate the opportunity to chat here. Jeremy, Todd and I spent the opening show of the talking about Kansas and what a wild event that was. And obviously you guys had a little extracurricular activity at one point during the event, but just in big pictures, what did you find with your cars? What types of things is your overview of what you guys dealt with at Kansas?
The biggest thing we're struggling with right now is we're stuck in this rut of going out early and qualifying and not qualifying where we need to. And you start the race with poor track position and, you tend to go a lap down early and you're fighting the rest of the way to get back and got ourselves, you look at it after the first green flag cycle, we came out on track and, in between the 8th and 10th place cars and ran there for 55 laps. So, there's a whole section there where I don't feel like our car was that bad, but you're just mired in track position so bad. So that's the biggest challenge. We've got to figure out a way to out qualify our qualifying spot in the draw here and get some momentum going.
And you talk about that. I don't think the fan base really understands the metric that NASCAR puts together, but that's kind of a cumulative thing of it's not random how you get positioned for qualifying, is it? Can you explain a little bit how that metric works?
Yeah, sure. So, years ago, there was the ping pong ball draw every week, and it was a random order to where you went out. And it really changed during COVID. When we weren't qualifying, they needed a metric to start the lineup for the next week. And it was a combination of your fast lap of the race, where you are in points, and where you finished in the race. And So we've kept that metric around, but now it determines the qualifying order. So honestly, it feels like a death spiral sometimes because it's hard to overcome. And you go to Richmond and Martinsville and some of these places and go out really early in qualifying. It's just really hard to overcome that. So I'd say that's one of the biggest battles we've been fighting this year with the 21 is just having, good starting positions, in the races. Fortunately, like we go to a Talladega or something, we can usually, our cars are good enough that we qualify better because the draw is less important.
And Jeremy, I want to go even a little further with this because you talked about track position, but pit stall. So this thing you call it a death spiral. It just kind of keeps piling on. I actually had this conversation with Rodney Childers early in the year, and Booty Barker referenced it last week here on the program because they were used to being on the positive side of it, and it just accumulates.
Yeah, I'd be a huge fan of going back to the ping pong ball at this point. I mean, you're going to have good weeks and bad weeks, but it's a little more random where I feel like where we're at right now, 1 week is affecting the next, and I don't really think that was the intent. So I think it's worth considering anyways. I'd like to see it considered.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get to the weekend that we had at Kansas. I thought I got to be up in the MRN booth there. A phenomenal race event and a different race event than what I kind of expected there. Didn't seem like running the wall ever came into play there, but the racetrack was really wide. What were your takeaways from how the race transitioned, the temperatures, and what we saw to the racetrack?
Yeah, I think it's staying cooler. Let some of the other lanes work a little bit better. I think when it's hot and sunny there, like everybody kind of migrates to the top and stays there, and it's a little harder to pass. But the track being cooler and having some grip, let guys kind of move around and run a lane down, run the bottom some. And you saw guys able to move around a little bit and have different options, which was kind of nice.
Jeremy, this is radio guy asking crew chief a question here because I don't understand things. It seems to me like from the inside to the outside of that racetrack is significantly different. How do you set up a car going into a race like this where you don't know if you're going to be on the outside, going to be on the inside? How drastic is the setup? Is it just an overall balance? How do you account for such width in the corners there?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is generally speaking, you see most guys make a long run now in practice. It's kind of hard to make real big changes in practice. So you see guys just go out and run their practice out. And we kind of harp on the drivers to make sure they run the top and run the middle and run the bottom, run some laps everywhere. So we have an understanding of what our balance is in different lanes. And then we can try to figure out what those compromises are. And if there's anything we can adjust to make that compromise as small as you can. And that's really about the only thing you can do.
So as we saw it, the racetrack, you talked about the qualifying piece and being in the back because you're having to go out early. Talk about what happens during qualifying. Why is going early such a penalty for cars?
It just seems like if you look at it, like the track just continues to go faster. Our lap would have been, towards the top, it wouldn't have transferred in Group A, but it would have been, probably 7th or 8th in Group A. And we're, 31st overall. So, it's just that it seems like whatever the phenomenon is, the track just seems to go faster. I mean, you look at how fast you look at the lap times from the top 5 of Group A and Group B, and Group B was significantly faster. And that happens a lot of weeks, so it's just a trend that it's hard to fight against. You're kind of swimming upstream.
Jeremy, I listened to a little, I heard Tyler Reddick earlier this weekend talking about it, and he talked about when you're running the middle of the pack or you're running the back of the pack, it's like a war back there. We had a lot of conversation after Dover about aero blocking for the win, for the lead, but is it indeed different running at the back of the pack, whether it's aero blocking, whether it's just overall traffic? How significantly different is it running back there?
Yeah, it's a completely different race. Like I said, after the first green flag cycle, we wound up around the 19 and the 10, and guys that were running 8th to 10th, and we raced single file, ran with them, wound up passing the 10 before the end of the stage, and he was racing in the top 10. When we're back in the back, like you try to make a pass, and there's somebody right behind you, and if you don't complete the pass, you're going to lose a spot or two, and guys are just racing so hard for 25th, and it's the air plays such a role in it, and it's hard to get enough momentum to clear a guy. And if you don't clear him, you almost get punished for being on offense, where sometimes you're better off to just stay where you are and protect your position.
That's really hard to do when you're running 25th.
Yeah,
exactly. Definitely.
I just can't imagine that. But we see that. We see cars that have pit issues or get penalties and end up in the back, and they can't recover. They were dominant cars and couldn't recover once. It's almost like it's a different race back there with how dirty the air is and what your car needs for balance. When you get that opportunity to cycle up forward through a green flag cycle, do you get a glimmer of where your balance needs to be differently? And do you tune your car differently between being 20th or being 5th?
Yeah, you definitely, the closer you get to the front, you get cleaner air. Your balance swings a little freer. So you have to keep that in mind. We did it at Texas. Texas presented more opportunities to stay out and do some of those things, just the way that race plays out. And, we cycled ourselves to the front a couple times and briefly led. So you get an idea of like, okay, like I'm a 2.5 tight in traffic, but I'm neutral when I'm in clean air, or, some delta there that always plays out.
Jeremy, one of the big hot button topics this year has been the new Ford Mustang Dark Horse. Is there, and I don't need to get all of the details, the specifics of it, but in general terms, what are some of the challenges, and how are you guys finding ways to overcome what you guys have been dealing with this car?
Well, I think, whenever you bring out something new, you do your testing, you do all your work ahead of time. You think you know what you're going to have, but you don't really know until you get on the racetrack, right? And so to me, it's really not a whole lot different than last year was, or the year before, even a little bit. Like, we weren't necessarily as good as we needed to be out of the gate at all the tracks. We had tracks that, the speedways continue to be a strength of ours. You see a lot of Fords up front at Daytona and Talladega, and you will again at Atlanta. I think that package lends itself to what our car's really good at, and it just it took us a little bit of time last year to figure out what we need everywhere else. And I think, we're slowly trending in that direction, and hopefully we can do what we've managed to do with the Fords the last couple of years and peak at the right time.
How would you say you are at this point of the year versus this point of the year last year? Compare the 2 years. Is the same road really ahead of you? Are you farther behind, or do you feel like you're a little ahead of that?
That's harder for me to answer because I've got a driver change in there. But, I think I would say about the same. I feel like, we can probably run about the same as we did at this point last year, and we've just got to keep gaining on it.
Jeremy, you mentioned you've got a driver change. Harrison Burton wheeling your car. You guys made the change before the playoffs, or as the playoffs started last year. And as we start to spin forward a little bit, you've got a driver that's had some success down at Darlington, a 6th-place run in this feature, or this race last year. As you get ready for Darlington, what's your degree of optimism? What's your degree to build upon Harrison's good run last year, and see if you can duplicate or even improve upon that? And how do you do that as a new crew chief? You're with a different guy, but do you rely on what Brian Wilson has told you? How do you build going into this weekend?
Yeah, fortunately, getting to race at Darlington with him last year was huge for us headed into this year. And that was our first race with him, and honestly had a great run going. We're literally about to drive into the top 10 and got caught up in a wreck. So I feel like it's definitely his favorite racetrack. He has a ton of confidence going there, which means the world. He always tends to run well there, and we got to leverage that. We need a good run, and we're looking to build off the setup that we used in the fall and what we've learned since then, and try to take a big step forward this week.
What makes this place where he's got confidence? What about it has he talked to you about that? I'm sure you had the conversations. What makes him comfortable here?
We've talked a lot about it, and I think he just he likes the place, which gives him a ton of confidence. I think, to be a young kid, but he's been around it a while, so I think he appreciates the history of Darlington. So I think, he has a lot of respect for the racetrack and wants to run well there, and that means a lot. And I think, he talks about having a better feel for the car there than anywhere else. And I think that's interesting when you understand how you can move around at Darlington and the different options that you have to find speed. I think he just has a really good feel for that, probably more so than anywhere we go.
Yeah. You talk about him having an appreciation for the history of Darlington. How about the history of the 21 car? I know you started your Cup crew chiefing career with the Woods brothers, and iconic relationships there, and you're back in kind of a ground there. Talk about the relationships with the Woods and the iconic 21 car.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first place I started back in 1999, working with John on his late model stuff and Elliott Sadler in the 21 car. So I've been there a couple times now. So for me, it's just a huge honor to be, part of the 21 and the history there. And, was fortunate enough to get the 99th win with Blaney in 2017. And, hopefully we can get 100 here before it's all said and done, and maybe some more. But got a really cool throwback paint scheme to the Glenwood Special this week. It looks really cool. And there's no team in the sport with more history in NASCAR than the Wood brothers. So it's really nice to be able to continue to pay tribute to that history.
Just the day in and day out. I was in the garage area at Kansas, and we talk about iconic mechanic hands-on guys. I talked to Dale Inman. Of course, Dale with so much success with Richard Petty. And then I watched him walk over to the Legacy Motor Club team, and just having Dale Inman walk up into that truck, you could see the respect of the guys. What's it like when Eddie or Len, or even I haven't seen Leonard out at the track as much, just what is that like to have that history there as part of your team, and those guys just walk up in the like they own the place. They do own the place, but what is that like to have those rub shoulders with people like that, just in the day in and day out for you and the guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's great to have not only as an asset to talk to about, how things have changed and where things are going, and have those kind of conversations, but Leonard Wood's still probably one of the smartest people I've ever been around in my life, and one of the most talented, machinists and everything else. And it's amazing to see some of the projects that he and Benny Belcher still work on at the old shop in Stewart. Some of the things they build are just amazing and out of this world. You can't really put a price on a value on being able to hang out with that kind of history. It's a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That's got to be spectacular. We talk about iconic racetracks, iconic race teams. If we go a week past Darlington, we go back to North Wilkesboro with a brand new surface, and Goodyear bringing an option tire. And as an open car, you get to experience this whole situation first. What are your thoughts on what North Wilkesboro is going to bring for us?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I think. It sounds like the repave is a little bit different than some of the repaves we've seen in the past. It sounds like there wasn't a lot of fall off at the test, though. So it'd be interesting to see how the track progresses throughout the week. There's obviously a lot of late models and modifieds and everything on it all week. So it'd be interesting to see just, what the racetrack does, first off, from the repave. And then I think the option tires is definitely a wrinkle we haven't really had lately. I think we tried it one time in Charlotte, but it wasn't a huge difference in the tire like I think it will be this time. So it'd be interesting for sure to see what happens, and looking forward to watching the All-Star heat races to kind of have an idea of what's going to happen with us on Sunday in the Open.
That is true. You do have those heat races in front of you, that's for sure. Final question for you. We get a chance to catch up with you every once in a while. Your nephew Gabe Yacano races out at Millbridge Speedway in a couple of divisions. How's his racing going? How's the young man producing, and how much enjoyment do you get out of watching him race?
It's a blast. He ran well in beginner box last year, and aged out of that. So he moved into box stock this year, which also made him old enough to where he can run the junior wing class. So Uncle Jay built another cart so we can run two classes. So you'll see me over there working a little harder this year when we're running both carts, but hoping that the junior wing kind of going a little faster than the box stock makes box stock an easier transition for him. And so far it seems like it's working. He's got a couple of podiums and a couple top fives already, racing against the older kids again. So hopefully he can get a win soon, and made the A last week in the junior wing and ran really well. So having a lot of fun with that, and hopefully we can keep him moving forward.
It's fun to watch. He is doing a really good job, and what a good kid he is, man. I love our kids out at Millbridge, and I love the interactions with dads and uncles and grandpas and everybody else, and grandmas, everyone else. It's really cool. Jeremy, always a pleasure to hang out and chat with you. We can't wait to see what you got. I can't wait to see that car first off when we go to Darlington, but can't wait to see what you guys have on the racetrack as well. Thanks for the time.
Thanks a lot, guys.
There we go. Jeremy Bullins joining us from over at Wood Brothers Racing. Stay with us. More Crew Call in just a moment. Welcome back. It is Crew Call here on the Motor Racing Network. Todd Gordon and Steve Post here. Always good to catch up with Jeremy Bullins. He always has such good insight about his program, the history, everything. He's just a good dude. He really is.
He is. I got a lot of years of working with him at Team Penske, and he's a cool guy. When you think about it, he does a great job with the race team and being progressive and doing what he can. But the love for he has a love for the history of the sport, which is a great week for this to come on for him. Appreciates the relationship with the Woods brothers, what he can do there. And it'll be cool to see. Look forward to this weekend because there's a place that Harrison's had some pretty good runs, as he talked about there, that Harrison feels comfortable. It'd be a good place to maybe help reset some of that metric.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Just reset the metric. It's fascinating that 2 weeks in a row now that has been the first thing. Booty brought that up.
Yes.
And now Jeremy brings it up as well. So we're going to Darlington. Man, I just love saying that, let alone the fact that we're going to jump in the car and head down there. As a crew chief, what are you looking at this weekend? What are your thoughts this weekend? What do we need to do this weekend to have a good run down there?
Well, there's a couple things I think. Running the wall is a big deal in 1 and 2. Whether you run the wall or not in 3 and 4, those are set up thoughts that you'll have to work through that short practice you've got. So, there's different ways of running the wall. A couple of years ago, they had a patch in turn 2.
That's right.
Changed up. I guess it's probably been 3 or 4 years at this point because I actually remember playing around that. But you could almost drive to that patch differently and just use the grip of the patch to turn the corner. So that's kind of aged its way back into Darlington. There's still a bump on the exit side of that. We saw cars spin out from that. You need to get through 1 and 2 with confidence. Having enough confidence, tug on the wheel, drive that thing up the wall, be on the throttle driving up the hill, and then where do you want to go to pass cars in 3 and 4? Do you wrap up at the wall? You got to have good entry security to get on the wall in 3, or are you going to run right down to the bottom at that white line and try to wrap around the bottom? Just exiting 4 is such a challenge from the bottom. So it's a unique racetrack, and you've got things to work on to be good in traffic.
Yeah, you do. We always talk about these up against the wall racetracks. In Kansas obviously gave us a great race. Kansas has multiple lines. You don't have the multiple lines. You have some similarities, and then you got to snuggle up to the wall, especially in 1 and 2. But you don't necessarily have the options there at Darlington, so you got to figure out other ways to pass cars.
Yes, and that's where 3 and 4, the run in the bottom, actually came in. It was funny. I remember having a conversation. What do you think about running the bottom? You can't run the bottom here, and then all of a sudden it split. So it's unique, and sometimes you can get to the bottom and get side by side, but then you've got to funnel out and narrow up because turn 1's not really side by side getting into. So it's a challenge. You have to race the racetrack. That's one of the cool parts about this place. This is probably the epitome of you're not racing the race cars, you're racing the racetrack. So putting the race together, and if you can come out of here with a trophy, you've had a major accomplishment.
But those other cars will interfere with you running the racetrack. They're playing a role in that. I love it. It is one of my favorite weekends of the year. And then just the throwback. The throwback, whether it's in this year it's to the roots of the sport. There's some really cool paint schemes planned. Can't wait to get down there and poke around the garage and get the look at the cars, but some of the stories behind them too.
Yeah, there's some cars that, as I've looked through the pictures of what NASCAR.com has published of them, I think the Hendrick stuff is all back to their own paint schemes, which is going to be very visible, very noticeable.
Yeah, the Kyle Larson Kellogg's one, man.
There's no doubt where that came from. There's no doubt where the 48's paint scheme came from. The 24 as well. They're on their own stuff, but then there's the stories. Those are the pieces I think you and I are going to enjoy digging into. Ryan Preece with a throwback to his modified days.
I know.
I just that's that orange and white and kind of bright blue. Really, the paint scheme brings me back to the modifieds that I've watched growing up. There's so many of those stories out there that are going to be really cool. I think the 4 cars got a throwback to a late model that Rodney used to drive.
Yeah,
there's so many stories.
That's
you won't see it necessarily until we tell the whole story behind it. That's going to be the fun part of getting down.
Chase Briscoe, it's a throwback to his dad, and on the trunk or the hood of the car is all the drivers that have driven for his granddad.
Yeah.
All the drivers that have driven for his granddad. So, I mean, just
those are the
stories.
Pieces, those are the pieces that are going to be really exciting to bring out of this for us as Yeah.
Storytellers, broadcasters. Yes, it's going to be great.
So,
plus the story of the race, and that'll always be exciting as well.
It's always good down there.
It really, truly is. We are going to be busy down at Darlington. We start on Friday night, 7 o'clock, NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, the Buckle Up, South Carolina. Easy for me to say 200. Saturday morning, we start off 10:30 a.m. with NASCAR Cup Series, practice and qualifying. And then at 1 o'clock, it's the NASCAR Xfinity Series Crown Royal Purple Bag Project 200. Motor Racing Network, if you're going to Darlington, there's a parade on Saturday afternoon after the Xfinity Series race. We'll have a float in the parade. So stop by and hang out for the parade there as we go, and then roll into Sunday, the Goodyear 400 at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, our airtime on Motor Racing Network. It is going to be a blast. Nothing in the world like racing down at Darlington. Going to be fun, and glad you're going to be joining us down there. Love having your insight, especially on this one here, because there'll be a little tire degradation, a little challenges here. We'll be counting
lots of strategy.
We'll be counting sets of tires and watching strategy, that's for sure. So fun stuff, no doubt about it. He's Todd Gordon, I'm Steve Post, and we thank you for joining us this time here on Crew Call on the Motor Racing Network.